Welcome to Earth Science. In the next couple of lessons, we're going to be talking about the differences between weather and climate, and we will be doing some in-class activities. So I am pre-recording some of the, more note-taking type of part of the lesson. So then that way you have background on the lesson, and then you're able to come into the classroom and work on the activity instead of wasting time going through some of this stuff first. So prior to lesson 10, you'll have to have watched this lesson. I would also like you to read the online lesson and take notes, okay? And then for lesson 10, we will be doing an in-class activity. So we'll get right into it. These are the objectives that we've been covering in the unit. The goals for today will be to state what the difference is between weather and climate. Okay, so we know that when we talk about weather, that the factors that we're looking at for weather are air temperature, air pressure, fog, humidity, cloud cover, precipitation, wind speed, and direction. And we know that all of these factors occur on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes they change throughout the day. They could change hour by hour. They might change over a little bit longer period of time. But we know that the conditions for weather change. So we know that when we talk about weather, weather happens because we get that energy from the sun that interacts with our atmosphere. And that weather can change fairly rapidly. When we look at climate, on the other hand, we're looking at conditions over a long period of time. So climate will take into consideration the long-term average of weather in a particular area. It'll look at average air temperature, average humidity, average wind speed and direction, the frequency of precipitation. It also takes into consideration the climate regions. Climate is steady and changes slowly. And based on the amount of energy that we get from the sun over time, will change climate or influence climate. And that's really the difference between weather and climate. Weather is something that occurs on a daily basis. Climate looks at the average temperature, air temperature, humidity, and so on over a long period of time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to briefly go over a little bit about the in-class activity that we are going to do, just so you have a little bit of background before you come in. The group activity is called Carry On, What's for Dinner? And what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at the restoration of wolves to Yellowstone Park after a 70-year absence. We'll be looking at the ecological effects of a top predator and how this has reduced negative effects of climate change on scavengers. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background information. So if you look at this very brief history of gray wolves in Yellowstone National Park, it was in 1872 that Yellowstone was established as a national park. From 1872 to 1917, wolves in and around Yellowstone were killed for their pelts and to protect livestock and also just for sport. In 1918, the National Park Service takes control of Yellowstone and continues to hunt the wolves. In 1926, the wolves are gone. They are no longer in Yellowstone. 1973, the government lists the gray wolf as an endangered species. And from 1995 to 96, 31 wolves were reintroduced into Yellowstone. Now, we're going to take a look at some of the data on this, and it's important from an ecological perspective to restore the gray wolf to the Yellowstone because it's a keystone species. And keystone species are usually the top predators. The keystone species affect their communities or their ecosystems in a much larger way than ever was expected based on abundance alone. So let's take a look at what that looks like. When we talk about a keystone species, a top predator, the top predator will hunt different animals, and one of the things that it'll hunt are the elk. And not only do the elk provide a food source for the wolf, but as the elk decompose, it provides as a food source for other animals. So what you're going to do is you're going to be taking a look at why carnivores are important to an ecosystem. And what you'll be doing is in the breakout room, you'll be working together to read a graph and answer questions. Each group, and I'm going to divide you into different groups, will have a different graph to look at, and your group will share that information about the data with the class. It's a graded in-class activity, and all students must participate in the group. So we'll go through the different graphs that you're going to look at in class, and I'll explain again in class what the expectation is, and we will go from there. Looking forward to having a fun time with this activity.